in the semi-final where he got the group around, and Dhoni rarely does team meetings. He said, whoever wants to play cricket comes in the following year. Whoever doesn't want to play, whoever here for the parties or entertainment, the other things, decide for yourselves and leave. That's when they wholeheartedly backed John Buchanan's multiple captaincy theory that he brought in before the 2009 season. I mean, if you're going into a field not knowing who's the leader for the day, then you're in trouble, right?
If I had my own team, I would just like to shout at people. I just would feel good if I had 5 legends in my team, foreigners, whatever, and I could just scream at them. Yeah. David, come here. I mean, that would be so much fun.
It's in the air. It's a 6.
IDFC FIRST Bank presents Century of Stories Cricket with myself, Cyrus Brochaskar, famous Shivaji Park youngster who went on to play for nobody. But with me is Young. Young is fair?
Yeah.
Young, well, next to me, obviously, it's fair. It's all relative, cricket and life. Shashank is with us. Shashank Kishore, ESPN Cricket Info, leading light there, as well as an author in his own right, and a great pundit when it comes to cricket. In fact, we're all cricket lovers in this room, so we, eat his brains up, asking him questions which make no sense, like, how much money should I pay Virat Kohli to attend my family function? But you don't know how to answer that. But today we're going to discuss something very interesting, because us Indians, and we're crazy about the game, we're also crazy about our captains. And we all have 2,000 opinions about who should be captain, who shouldn't be captain, why was this captain dropped, why wasn't he dropped, saluting this captain for stepping down, because IPL has had more drama than a Greek play. Let's start at the beginning. Here's a fact, you guys, maybe, I don't know if it's hit anybody at the moment, but we've had in 2008, in the beginning, Shane Warne as the only foreign player captain out of the teams that were available then for RR, and they went on to win. And today, 18 seasons later, we're shooting while this is going on, the IPL, we have Pat Cummins for Hyderabad as the only foreign captain, once again an Australian. All the others are Indian. So it's almost come a full circle where for some reason, the management in each team says, let's go with the local captain. Now, why that is, these many dynamics and reasons involved, not easy to answer, but the pressure's on you. So, Shashank, let's start with the beginning. What's your observation about the fact that we had only that one foreign captain? Now, again, we've come back to this.
I mean, at that point, India had a lot of iconic cricketers still very much, playing the game. Mm-hmm. It was hard to look beyond a Kolkata franchise.
Let's name them.
Without Saurav Ganguly. Yeah. Bangalore was Rahul Dravid. Although you could argue that Anil Kumble had another compelling case to be captain.
Absolutely.
Hyderabad didn't have a marquee T20 or a white ball cricketer at that point in time. Lakshman was obviously a test
I don't
star.
Think that's fair. I've seen some Lakshman's one-day centuries which are as good as anybody else's.
That was in 2003 and 4.
Yeah.
IPL had moved on, and
but bro, what a batsman! I'm a huge Lakshman fan. You can't say that to me, Baba. Just because you're from Karnataka, you can't get away with this. So, I'm just kidding. Huh?
Yeah.
You keep your water disputes with the other state. Leave us alone. Huh.
So obviously, Lakshman being from Hyderabad, was penciled in to be captain of Deccan Chargers.
So the thinking was also somewhat correct that we have the local flavor. If they are legends, even better.
Big players from the region, Virender Sehwag in New Delhi. So Sachin Tendulkar, Mumbai Indians.
Mm-hmm.
You can't look beyond. So all these were a no-brainer.
But then why Shane Warne?
I mean, one is the Rajasthan Royal owners were partly from the UK. And they had assembled a management team that had, come in from there. And they didn't have a local star, so to speak, a young Indian player from the region who they felt could take the, team up. So that's how they approached the Royals. One of them who brought Shane Warne on board at the Royals was his classmate from school, who was signed to be the CEO for them for the first season. And he happened to, first put the idea in Shane Warne's ear about...
Also, to be honest, if you don't have a superstar, Indian superstars in the team, who's going to tell Shane Warne he won't be at first slip? He's a difficult guy to handle, I would suppose.
Yeah.
He's such a big star.
Yeah. So Shane Warne was obviously retired from international cricket by then. He was initially reluctant. They had pursued him for nearly 6 months. Mm-hmm. And the clincher was that Manoj Badale, one of the co-owners, told Warne that this is your opportunity to be the best Australian, show the world that, you were the best Australian captain that never was.
Yeah.
And that line proved to be the clincher, and he immediately came on board. So,
and he won the first IPL.
He may have been a foreign player in that sense, but everything he did, the way he went about, working with a young Indian talent, identifying them. He was basically their one-man army for the first season. He was a mentor, he was the coach, he was the captain, he was the
How do
elder
you rate him as
brother
a
of
captain?
sorts in the team. He was outstanding in that first season. I mean, it technically speaking, you would say that it wasn't his job to conduct pre-season camps and identify talent and pick the Swapnil Asnodkars, the Kamran Khan.
This is the man who says the coach is what brings you to the stadium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Swapnil Asnod, Kamran Khan, Yusuf Pathan, all these young players. So he conducted a camp, identified players, brought them out to the franchise, said these are the players we want to sign. You could have forgiven him for not doing any of that because he's obviously a big marquee international player. But he did all that. So, in a sense, he did everything that was asked of him as a captain the Indian way. He mingled with the youngest member of the team to the oldest member of the team. Had no, hierarchies in the setup. Whether you were a senior player, whether you were a junior player, everyone was treated the same way. And I think he writes about this in his book as well, where some Indian players wanted preference of hotel suites and big hotel rooms, etc. And only the captain and the manager were given that privilege, and the rules were the same for everyone else. So he brought everything on board, as the way an Indian captain would do it, or the way we in India would do it. So he truly, reflected that local culture, the local tradition of picking players, doing everything the way you do as a young Indian coach.
So Rajasthan's gain was Australia's loss. In cricketing sense, you can say Australia picked the wrong one by not picking him.
Exactly. I mean, the perception at the start was that Warne, being the colourful character that he was, that wouldn't fit into that traditional mold of an Australian captain. And at the end of the IPL, after he won it, the narrative had flipped around to reflect that sentiment that he was probably the best Australian captain that never was.
Shashank, in another episode, we'll get into the relationships with Swapnil and Kamran and all these guys, because he played a very important role, and it's good to see that dynamic. Yeah. But for now, let's talk more about the captains. Let's go into the Indian guys. I mean, these are the biggest names of their generation. I mean, biggest names in cricket forever. I mean, they'll hold their own in any generation. Rahul Dravid, Sachin Tendulkar, Sehwag, you mentioned, Lakshman, Ganguly. They were the chosen few. How would you rate the performances?
I mean, in the initial years, everything was a novelty in the IPL. Kolkata Knight Riders, for example, you just couldn't look past Sourav Ganguly as a captain. But at the end, Shah Rukh Khan was a big brand by himself. All the brands that were associated with him were associated in the IPL. So, at the end of the first season, when they took stock of where they were as a team, there was a sense that they had, disappointed everyone. And that led to them thinking beyond, traditional cricketing logic and look at new opportunities. And that's when they wholeheartedly backed, John Buchanan's multiple captaincy theory that he brought in before
What's
the
your
2009 season. I mean, if you're going into a field not knowing who's the leader for the day, then you're in trouble, right? So that's what the idea was fundamentally, to have different people being able to take on different leadership positions. You had Chris Gayle, who was, obviously, who liked his parties and, colourful life off the field. There was David Hussey, who was coming in for his first season or the second season. Brendan McCullum, who had lit up the IPL. So, and Sourav Ganguly, who hadn't had the best of first years as a captain and as a batter, but very much still a compelling brand for Bengal and for Indian cricket, even though he had retired in 2008. So you had different personalities, and it almost seemed like it was a recipe for disaster, because you needed a complete buy-in from the captain, which wasn't the case here.
But partly, are you blaming it on the fact that we have aging superstars also? Or was the T20 format like a new format for them in a sense?
I think
because they're all excellent white ball players in terms of 50 overs.
Absolutely, but they had decided very early on that they weren't going to be playing the T20 World Cup, and India went in with a young team. And I think very early on, everyone realized that T20 cricket was moving at a breakneck speed, and their games probably wasn't, evolving with the times. You could still get away with it in the first year because everything was a novelty, and teams hardly had time to build their squads around players. There was no scouting, etc. But over 3-4 years, they realized that, once they had the means to do it, once money started coming in, once the TV rights started, giving them return on investment, teams started to put that money back into the game, back into the grassroots, build a scouting network like Mumbai Indians superbly did. And they started slowly reaping the rewards of looking beyond just big names and look at results and, what that brought about.
So, but you can't blame the early years of the IPL of thinking of the legends, because it's almost like they need the legend more than the legend needs them to propel the game forward. But very quickly, the ruthlessness of T20 cricket and franchise cricket, especially, is exposed when you just let go of these guys. For many of us, because we're sentimental Indian guys and very emotional about our stars, etc., it's a very difficult thing to do for a Kolkatan or Bengali to accept that, Saurav is sidelined within minutes. It's not like, it happens really quickly. The same thing, in a sense, with the Rahul Dravid fiasco with Vijay Mallya, not knowing exactly how that planned out, but in the end, he disappears.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on that? Were we a little insensitive to our legends, or is this just a way of T20? And now it's, of course, something that we've accepted.
I think, all of them were mature enough at that point in time to understand that, this is not going to be forever. And they all were in the last legs of their careers. So, at that point, probably they were looking to, they were happy with just playing and giving the leadership to someone else. The manner in which certain decisions were made could have probably been made a little better. But I think teams had started already becoming a lot more practical. Kolkata hadn't won in the first 3 seasons of the IPL. So they went into the auction in 2010 realizing that they had to, find a way to do that.
Change.
And one of the ways that they thought they could take the team forward was bring in a young leader who they thought could resonate with this brand of being aggressive, being passionate. And Bengalis are passionate people. They love their cricket, they love their football. And that's when they brought in a man who had this intensity, the fire, hot-headed at times. He still is, Gautam Gambhir.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a love at first sight, KKR and Gautam Gambhir. But once they started seeing the results come their way, 2011 they made the playoff, and I think they were within one game of making the final. They needed 21 or something to defend in 1 over, and then El Balaji somehow couldn't do that, and they lost. But once they started seeing the results and the graph of the team improving, Bengalis or the local fan base completely wholeheartedly got behind Gambhir.
They forgave the Ganguly episode.
In fact, there was one game in I think 2011 or 12, I can't remember. Sourav Ganguly was playing for the Pune Warriors.
Yeah.
The game was at Eden Gardens,
Yeah.
and it was almost like it was Sourav Ganguly against KKR, but the entire crowd was with him. So it took a while for that. The fans to wholeheartedly bring Gautam
Only in
Gambhir on
India
board.
Will the state team support the captain from the same area with another team against the home team? It's just amazing.
And they won, and they went on to win in 2012, and that completely changed the equation. So at that point is where a lot of people realize that it's obviously driven by results, and that's what you want to see. It's great to have being sentimental towards a captain from your region, great Indian tester, great Indian player who's captain for so many years. End of the day, results are
But
what
there was
matters.
one 100-year contract that was handed out, and that was in Chepauk, no longer called Chepauk, I think, but a 100-year contract to MS Dhoni, who, after winning the 2007 T20 World Cup, then didn't have the best of years 2008 to 2009, but comes back in 2010-11 with both international and domestic IPL results, and the Champions League as well, if I remember correctly.
Chennai Super Kings was fascinating because, again, like Rajasthan Royals, they didn't have a local Indian star at that point in time who they could build their brand around. There was Dinesh Karthik, but Dinesh Karthik wasn't as established as probably the Tendulkars and the Gangulis. So, bringing him on board wasn't exactly an idea that they had in mind. And Dhoni had just won the T20 World Cup, and they thought it made best sense to go all out and get Dhoni at the auction, which they did. And Dhoni fit into the culture seamlessly because India Simmons, the owners at that point in time, had this culture of running cricket in the city for 35 years, league cricket structures. So they had a scouting advantage, the network of cricketers that they tapped into. They brought on board the likes of Badrinath, Ashwins, a lot of players Indian players at the core, and Dhoni was the perfect leader there. And even though they didn't win in the first 2 years, they were really, one of the teams that no one really wrote off. They went to the final in 2008. They went to the semi-final in 2009. And it was very unlike Dhoni that in 2009, after they won, they were knocked out by RCB in the semi-final, where he got the group around, and Dhoni rarely does team meetings. He said, whoever wants to play cricket comes in the following year. Whoever doesn't want to play, whoever here for the parties or entertainment, the other things, decide for yourselves and leave. Very unlike of Dhoni to say that, because he'd seen early success as a T20 captain, But 2008 and 9, both with India and internationally, he hadn't had the best years. India hadn't made the T20 World Cup semi-final in 2009. They didn't defend their crown. 2010 was equally a tough year for them. But prior to that, he had an IPL trophy finally. So he broke that drought, when he won the title. And in that year, I mean, there was every possibility that CSK wouldn't have made the final. I mean, they need 75 overs or something in their final league game to qualify. And then Dhoni comes in and, clobbers Irfan Pathan in the final over, wins the game. But his reaction after that told you of how much it meant to him, how much it meant to the franchisee. I mean, he slapped his, punched his face or jaw, or whatever.
Yeah, I was very worried.
And
because people copy that.
And then
Dhoni's a tough guy.
Yeah,
but
you
all over
never
India, what happened, Jairam? Sorry, yaar.
And you'd never seen him show emotion on the
very
field
rare,
as a captain, not even when, it was a dire situation. So for him to, react the way he did, told you how much it meant to him. And I think he later said that, when the franchisee pays you so much money to deliver, it's your responsibility to, do it for them. And we hadn't done it. And finally, we've qualified. So that's why the reaction.
But also, Shashank, you could say it's it's a good poster for secularism. The fact that you have a Gambhir being loved in Calcutta, just embraced by everyone there. Dhoni, I mean, he's king of Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
They just absolutely adore him. So these kind of things happening. But it's even, to take it a little further, the foreigner as a captain also is loved. For a little while at least, until the performances drop. But the strange thing has happened in the IPL, which I didn't see before in sport actually, which is where you self-drop yourself.
Yeah.
Now we've seen that in the BGT with Rohit Sharma. Sangakkara was, I think, one of the first to do that.
Ricky Ponting did that
Ricky
as well,
Ponting as
2013,
well.
midway
So
through the season.
What's your thought on that?
I mean, by then, obviously, cricket had moved on. T20 cricket had moved on. You were beginning to wonder if some of the big international stars were past their sell-by date. Ricky Ponting opened the batting with Tendulkar. So from that standpoint, while it invoked a lot of nostalgia for fans, teams were moving on from the, just the nostalgia factor. And Ricky Ponting couldn't buy a run that season, and he was woefully out of form. And midway through the season, he called the team through a meeting and said, he's stepping down. But the good thing that Mumbai had done by then is they'd already identified Rohit Sharma to be a leader. And they'd picked him in 2011 before the auction from the Deccan Chargers. And Rohit had actually been vice captain unofficially to Adam Gilchrist through those couple of years that they won, and then in 2010. And in 2011, when Rohit was dropped from the Indian ODI squad for the World Cup, that was a kind of a turning point in his own evolution as a cricketer. He worked a lot with Abhishek Nair, who was one of the big Mumbai stars at that point. Very unlucky to have not played for India the amount of cricket that he should have. But he took him under his wings and he put him through this military-style regimen of waking up early. He was literally staying with him. Didn't allow him to use the lift, climb 28 floors down in his building 5 times a day. Wake up at 6 a.m. So he built Rohit Sharma to be this tough guy who, could absorb, pressures of international cricket, because until then Rohit only had this word talent following him everywhere else. And to a point that he was absolutely annoyed by the very mention of that word. So by the time Rohit came in as captain, he was completely ready for the job. He performed as a batter. And he'd been groomed for that role by the Mumbai Indians, who by then had begun to, work their way through developing a feeder system beneath the playing.
So Abhishek Nair also does the same thing with Dinesh Karthik many years later. Is
and a lot of other players. Shreyas Iyer, for example.
Iyer, yes,
Ankrish Raghuvanshi, who's played...
who's now with Kolkata Knight Riders.
Kolkata Knight Riders. Varun Chakravarti, for example.
Yeah, true.
So he's worked with a lot of
quite the mentor
cricketers.
which people don't know about.
Exactly. Yeah.
But coming back to the captains, we had some strange... David Warner, for example, very much with RCB, with Sunrisers doing really well. Won them a title, if I'm not mistaken, as well. But then when the decline sets in, it doesn't take long to remove such an icon who's been their main player for a few seasons.
And David Warner did so much for Sunrisers, not just on the cricket field, but as a brand as well.
Right.
He truly resonated with that Telugu ideology. You saw him dance to a number of reels.
It's going to be in a film,
He soaked in all that local culture. He mingled with the crowd. He became a very revered cricket figure there. They would call him Warner Garu in Hyderabad. So David Warner was as much treated a local as any other homegrown cricketer was. But I think the real decline for Warner started I think the after effects of the ban for ball tampering kind of also
Yeah.
played its hand in
2018
Warner's
onwards,
decline,
yeah.
because in his absence, you saw Kane Williamson coming into the to take over the captaincy, and in the first year that he captained, they went to the final. I think they lost to CSK in the final, but Williamson had a great season with the bat as a captain. So and when Warner came back after the ban, he wasn't the same player that he was. I mean, he had great performances for 5 years in a row, and one of which culminated in a title win in 2016. But when he came back, I think Warner's impact as a batter started to slowly fade away, and that's when it became a bit of a problem, to the extent that the final season when he
They
wasn't
benched him.
they benched him, and they didn't just bench him. He
I
wouldn't
felt
even
really bad
travel to the
watching that,
11.
yeah.
He wouldn't even be part of the dugout. He was sitting in the stands.
It's a bit like Ganguly
watching
being
the
dropped
team.
by the Cal team. You just, it's difficult to palate when you see that they are such a brand ambassador for the brand as well.
Yeah, so it didn't play out well publicly with the ownership.
What happened to Warner Garu then?
What happened to Warner? Warner Garu is very much part of the local culture in Hyderabad. He still is very much
He's
loved
going
there.
to be launched in a Telugu film, so I'm told, off the record. But look at the irony here that you mentioned Kane Williamson, and then Kane Williamson himself gets pushed down the order, and Owen Morgan replaces him a couple of seasons later.
No. Kane Williamson obviously came in at that point in time. Kane Williamson was opening the batting, and T20 cricket moved on to ultra aggressive approach right through the innings, and Williamson didn't fit that mold, and Williamson was giving away middling starts, but it didn't seem good enough at that point in time. But because they had named him captain, I mean, you've built your entire season around him at the auction.
Yeah.
It got to a point where they had to make a decision. And the one thing that we understand from this is, it's not the name as much as it is about the position or the role, or performances that speak for itself. And we've seen it happen with Morgan. We've seen it happen with Kane Williamson, Ricky Ponting in the early years. So yeah, I think the best of cricket.
It's against the adage which we are grown up with, hearing about form is temporary, class is permanent, because here it's all about 3 matches or 4 matches. If you lost your form, you're in trouble. And all the IPL franchises seem to be the same. It's almost like a mathematical look at everything, very clinical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chances, boom, not performing, team not performing, we need change.
And
change is quick.
And now we're seeing it with even the Indian captains. I mean, KL Rahul, for example, the fallout last year with Lucknow Super Giants didn't play out the way it should have. I mean, closed doors discussions playing out on the field, the team owner, having a go at the captain, whatever was said, we don't know, we're not privy to.
I mean, it must have put pressure on both of them, because the internet is so unbelievably mean and cruel that where it could have died down, it wasn't allowed to die down. So then the egos come into it.
It didn't make for a good viewing.
I saw it 34 times.
Yeah, as an owner, I think he's fair in demanding results, because when you pay 7,000 crores for an IPL team, you better win and show those results.
I think nobody would argue with it if it was done privately, because I mean, that's the business. But I think publicly, then the star looks hurt, and it wasn't a good show.
Exactly. So the public sentiment didn't work the way.
But if I had my own team, I would just like to shout at people. I just would feel good if I had 5 legends in my team, foreigners, whatever, and I could just scream at them. David, come here. That would be so much fun. I'm sorry to take you away from your serious conversation, but so this is a list of captains. Have we left anyone out that we'd like to speak of? Anil Kumble?
Anil Kumble in 2009 took them to the final after taking over from Kevin Peterson midway through the season, because Peterson had to leave for England commitments. 2010 he led them to third place finish. But again, 2011, when that entire rehash of squads happened, RCB didn't go for Kohli. He was the understudy to Daniel Vettori for the first 2-3 years, and that is the time when Ray Jennings was actually looking at Kohli and building him up to be the captain that he went on to become in 2013. So Rohit and Kohli coming into the picture in 2013 changed a lot in terms of Indian captains becoming the big brands that they went on to become the face of the IPL. Dhoni, of course, will be.
He's beyond captain. He's chairman emeritus. But coming back to RCB for a second, now we are presently in the Rajat Patidar era, where you've gone with a guy who's done a little bit of cricket for India, but not a T20, who's definitely got potential on the first class circuit, and who's done okay, not great, but decent enough in his 3 or 4 seasons. Now he's the captain, and he's projected as the future. So obviously there's a bit of a punt, also a gamble taken sometimes. I think youth is on his side, etc. But clearly local flavour. now. Looking forward, at least at the present, things can change in the IPL season to season. But as of now, the Indian captain seems to be the thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons for them not retaining Faf, who delivered results for them in playoffs into the 3 years that he captained, was that he was already 41 and Faf is retired from international cricket. He's not playing a lot of T20 leagues. I mean, he's playing the CPL and a couple of other leagues. But, the intensity that you need as a captain or as a batter who is playing regularly versus somebody who's just playing for a few months in a year is completely different. And I think that was one of the reasons that dissuaded them from going back for him at the auction and bidding for him. And that's when they decided that they've got someone who they feel can do the job, and Patidar steps in. It was a role in a way that was custom made for him, because Patidar hadn't captained at any level of cricket, even junior cricket, earlier prior to becoming the the RCB captain. And then last year when they spoke to him about the possibility of the job, he goes back to his home state, Madhya Pradesh, tells them that this is what my IPL franchise is thinking. Is there a possibility I can captain? And incidentally, the man who gives him the captaincy job is the guy he is up against in his first match as an IPL captain, Chandrakant Pandit, who's coach of KKR, but who's also coach of Madhya Pradesh. So Pandit gives his sign-off and Patidar becomes Madhya Pradesh captain. They go on to the finals of the Mushtaq Ali.
And he shows his gratitude by beating KKR in their opening
And he
match.
shows, so it's an incredible story of how much faith they've put in Patidar, a guy who's not captain previously, but he's shown he's a man for the job to take this team forward.
IDFC first fact. Among those who led the teams in at least 50 IPL matches or more, the highest win percentage for an Indian captain is 59.37%, and that belongs to, music please, MS Dhoni. Among foreign players who have led in at least 50 plus matches, the highest win percentage is that of Shane Warne, a healthy 55.45%. So at the moment, as we stand, Pat Cummins is now once again the only foreign captain, having reached the finals but not winning last season. So what do you think is the Hyderabad blueprint? They go with Pat Cummins? Are they trying to groom an Indian guy somewhere down the line? Because there doesn't seem to be a very clear path there. If Pat Cummins wasn't to play, was to get injured, lose form, whatever, what would be the second choice?
I mean, it's a very tough thing. They've gone all in on him for the last year, and he delivered results. And Pat Cummins is, a cricketer who's way beyond just he isn't a man of just, who's thinking cricket all the time. He's got so much of interests outside of cricket that players are able to connect with him at a human level. Someone like a Nitish Reddy if he's sitting across and talking with Pat Cummins, sure, there must be a little bit of cricket involved, but probably you wouldn't be surprised to hear them discussing real estate in Hyderabad or cryptocurrency, bitcoins. I mean, I'm told that one of the first things that Pat Cummins asked for prior to boarding the flight to India for the IPL was a list of the entire squad, the strengths and weaknesses of all the Indian players, basically a profile of all the Indian players that he could read up on, who could research on, watch videos on, to kill time in the flight. So that's how much involved he is at a planning stage as a captain. So I think at this point in time, they've gone all in on Pat Cummins. They believe that he's the man to, build this team over the next 2-3 years. But I think they have someone in Nitish Reddy who they've built as an Indian young cricketer who also comes from the region. Whether that's going to be translating into him being a captain few years down the line, you won't know. Maybe he can be the next Shreyas Iyer or the Patidar. Only time will tell. But I think for now, they've completely gone on all in.
Now, Shreyas, before we wrap up, I want to ask you one more question.
Shreyas?
Shreyas basically wins you the title last year. Had a decent season with the bat as well. And then doesn't get picked by his franchise, retained by the franchise. And then lands up captaining Punjab. My thing is, only in the IPL this can happen. So now you're the unsuccessful captain, you get dropped. Losing captain midway, you can drop yourself or get dropped. But a successful captain also, in a sense, gets dropped.
I don't think it was a case of him being dropped at that point.
He should have retained him.
As much as I think Shreyas Iyer felt that he demanded a certain price, which KKR felt would affect their auction purse.
But he got paid even more afterwards.
So I think there's a lot more to the dynamics. Earlier in 2010-11, when the auction happened for the first time, there was this rule where irrespective of how much ever the captain was paid or the franchise paid the captain, it's only a fixed amount that would get deducted from the auction purse.
Oh.
Subsequently, that was changed to reflect the higher amount. So, supposing I sign a player for 10 crore, only 10 crore, 8 crore would get deducted from my purse. The 10 crore, the 2 crores extra wouldn't. That was the rule earlier. But now, if I'm paying someone 10, then the entire amount gets deducted from the purse. So I think it was a question of the auction dynamics at play as well, which may have had a hand in Shreyas Iyer not being retained, because they had 4 other people that they were retaining: Sunil Narayan, Andre Russell. So I think,
well, if KKR have a poor season and mid-season right now, it'll be a little odd that they let go of their captain who won them, and then of course they lost their coach as well. But those are circumstances beyond your control. And then you let go of your winning captain, and then you have a not so good season. You know what's as great as being an IPL winning captain? The feeling of watching your savings grow with IDFC FIRST Bank 7.25% interest rate per annum on your savings account. Zero charges on all savings account services and monthly interest credits. Now that's the kind of greatness we all need in our lives. So talking about captains, the guy who's defined the era in a sense is Virat Kohli. So let's quickly talk about him. 22 years old when he was trusted the captaincy by the RCB management. Tell us the go-behinds that happened, because there was all kinds of intrigue at the point when he suddenly is given that position.
yeah, Vijay Mallya signed him purely because he'd won the Under-19 World Cup, not because he saw potential in Virat Kohli, the batter. Virat Kohli had a brand following already as an 18-year-old.
As the captain of the Under-19.
As the captain of the Under-19. That's what got him into the team. And the first 2 years were obviously, riddled with inconsistency. That's when a new coach that came in, Ray Jennings, saw potential in Virat Kohli, earmarked him to be a captain, not just for RCB but for India. But the point was, those talks could only have materialized if the franchisee was keen on retaining Virat Kohli, which they eventually did, albeit in dramatic circumstances, which we've spoken about, or we will. So once they signed Virat Kohli as a retention in 2011, they saw a roadmap for him, and they said that this is the player who's going to be with us potentially for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And they almost made him second in command to Daniel Vettori to begin with. So it wasn't as if Virat woke up one fine day and was told that he's going to be captain. He was groomed for the job for a couple of years. And when Daniel Vettori was done, the switch between Vettori to Virat was almost as seamless. Unlike, what had happened earlier with, Dravid going out, Peterson coming in, Peterson going out, Kumble coming in. So there was a lot of juggling that happened in the first few years. But once the transition between Vettori to Virat happened, you saw him being the boss of the team for the next 6-7 years. The results is, of course, something that we can all argue and say didn't go their way, or they could have won, they didn't win. They had a few good years, few bad years. But I think as a captain, he was in control of the team.
But Shashank, is it fair to say that since they earmarked him as an Under-19 World Cup winning captain, that in the back of their heads they always thought this is the guy who will at some point lead the franchise as well? It must have been there.
Yeah, that was their initial instinct, and they felt that those instincts matched. Those instincts came true when they saw him play, being that aggressive character, as they call it, the play bold philosophy.
So he's a natural leader. Yeah. He's been that from the beginning.
Natural leader who fit all boxes for them as a brand, as an individual, as a captain. So I think they decided, and I think Kohli has repaid them not just as a captain, but as a brand for what he's done for the franchise.
But you mentioned a seamless transition, but that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, CSK had that when Dhoni decided he was quitting.
And Jadeja seemed like the perfect choice. What went wrong there?
Ravindra Jadeja seemed to be the perfect choice, but Ravindra Jadeja seemed a reluctant captain. There were certain decisions that he wouldn't take on the field that they felt was affecting not just his performance but the team's performance. And Ravindra Jadeja always had this, at that point in time, had this feeling that no matter what the responsibility, the title next to his name was,
he won't match.
He was almost always second in command. It was Dhoni who was in command, and that's when Jadeja just decided to, hand the captaincy back to Dhoni midway through the season. And Dhoni captains them. The following year, they go on to win the title. And, and who's the one who's winning them the title? That's Ravindra Jadeja. The same guy who... As a player. The same guy who the entire crowd in Chennai often cheers when he gets out, or, wants him to get out so that they can see Dhoni bat. Hits a 6 and a 4 to win them a final in the most dramatic circumstances. So, Jadeja as a Chennai Super Kings player... I think that's something that he's done so much.
The transition with Rituraj is okay. Rituraj comes
Yeah.
in and seems to have seamlessly,
Rituraj is a much calmer personality. He's again somebody who's learnt on the job. He's done the job at Maharashtra for some time. Good cricketing brain. I mean, in his first season with Chennai Super Kings, he didn't play a single game, but there was an instant where in a game against Kolkata Knight Riders, when Andre Russell goes hammer and tongs at Chennai spinners, this uncapped guy who hasn't played a game and who wouldn't have played a game that season goes up to Dhoni and says, I think you shouldn't have kept this fielder there. You should have kept him probably somewhere else. And for Dhoni to have soaked in that, and Dhoni at that point in time, he felt that was a very sane advice from somebody who he thought had displayed those very qualities of leadership at that point in time. So that's the small thing that turned the tide Ruturaj way, and that's what got them thinking on those lines when he decided to give him the captaincy. So Ruturaj has shown he's the man for the job next few years or how many ever years. Jadeja was a fairly reluctant captain at that point in time, who probably felt the pressures of being a cricketer was big enough at that point to give the job back to Dhoni.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one question outside the IPL for a second. So who should be our T20 captain going forward? Who should be our white ball captain, 50 and 20? We have Surya Kumar at the moment. We have Hardik in a sense.
Yeah.
What's your pick?
I felt that Shreyas Iyer deserved a run in the Indian team, not very recently, but right from 2019.
T20.
In the one-day setup at least.
One day setup, he's already there
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I think as a captain, I think right now, if you have to look beyond Rohit Sharma, you'd probably pick someone like an Iyer. Or, if they consider KL Rahul to be probably that cricket definition of old, then probably Shreyas Iyer fits the job because he's a certainty in the 11, gun number 4 player, great batter of spin, has body of work behind him. So I think in one day cricket, Shreyas Iyer ticks most boxes.
walks like a West Indian. He's got
and
that
walks like a
flamboyance.
West Indian, has the swag.
Yeah.
Very, very articulate as well.
I think you're a Shreyas fan because of the name as well.
I'm not Shreyas, I'm Shashank.
You're Shashank. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll end it here. Shashank, Shreyas, all the S's coming together. It doesn't matter if you're captain or not captain in the IPL because your fate is decided, I think, in a clinical manner. That's what we've learned.
Yeah.
No emotions, no spiritual leader, nothing like that. I mean, Dhoni, of course, bucks the trend, but all said and done, it's all about how you do on the day, and a few days later, it can change.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we wrap this episode, a quick alert for you by IDFC FIRST Bank about fake e-challan scams. Scammers nowadays send fake e-challan links via text or emails about traffic violations, urging immediate action with fake payment links. Remember, legitimate e-challans include detailed vehicle info and photos, so please save yourself by always verifying the dues on the official website, which is echallan.parivahan.gov.in. If in doubt, contact the police helpline. Use my name. Thank you for turning into another episode of the Century of Cricket podcast brought to you by IDFC FIRST Bank. I'll see you next week. Havalar, chutta nahi hai.